Coming up, as Liz Truss hits the ground, to use her words, in this video I'll be explaining why she is totally unfit for the office of Prime Minister. And it's not just me who realises this. According to a poll by YouGov last week, more than half the British electorate think she will make a poor or terrible Prime Minister, with terrible being by far the most common response. If you enjoy watching my videos, please give this one a like and spread the word by sharing a link on your favoured social media platforms. If you subscribe, you can also hit the bell icon to be notified of each new video I release. It's a symptom of our broken British democracy that Liz Truss could be elected our new Prime Minister, appointing ministers and framing laws for the next 2 years or more on the back of being voted for by only 0.14% of the British electorate. To put that in perspective, her total of 81,316 votes from Conservative Party members is less than the number of Londoners who voted for Count Binface in the London mayoral election last year. And no wonder. As a politician, Liz Truss is far less credible than Count Binface. She's been part of government since 2010, and in that time has delivered nothing in terms of policy or commitments. Though she was instrumental, of course, in delivering sewage to our beaches and inland waterways. According to official figures, raw sewage discharge has gone from just over 1 per outlet in 2016 to 29 per outlet in 2021, after Truss, the then Environment Secretary, cut £80 million worth of sewage monitors as part of her £235 million cut to the Environment Agency's budget, which she branded efficiency savings. Her dogma of rolling back the state through low tax, low spend infuses every decision she makes, and this one saw the country literally swimming in this summer. How much more fitting a metaphor could there be after 12 years of Tory rule? But that apart, she's delivered nothing of note during the whole 12 years she's had in Parliament. When she occasionally delivers a coherent sentence, she has a surprised look on her face, as though she can't quite believe what she's just achieved. And although I'm as pleased as anyone to see the back of the lying, corrupt charlatan Boris Johnson, for many people he did have charisma, and a way of shrugging off direct hits on his credibility through his unique policy, which he himself outlines here.
I've got a brilliant new strategy, which is to make so many gaffes that nobody knows which one to concentrate on.
So they cease to be newsworthy.
They cease to be newsworthy. You completely outgeneral the media.
Not only does Truss totally lack this charisma and media-savvy intelligence, but she became Prime Minister while having the support of less than 1 in 3 of her fellow Tory MPs. In the final ballot of Tory MPs, she picked up only 113 votes out of the 358 available, whereas at the same stage, Johnson had had a majority of Tory MPs supporting him before it was put to the membership. Not only was Truss less popular than Sunak amongst Tory MPs, but many of those Tory MPs were still preferring Johnson over either of the candidates, even after all the corruption, the rule-breaking, and the final spectacular fall from grace after he promoted a known sex offender and then lied about it. So, TLDR, it's not at all clear yet that Liz Truss can command a reliable majority in the House of Commons. And the risk is that she can only do so by kowtowing to the whims of various factions, such as rees-mogg's extreme right-wing European Research Group. Her weakness may be exploited by these minority interest groups, leveraging concessions from Truss in return for their support. And even worse news for her, this headline in the Daily Mirror reports that there are already 12 Tory MPs planning to submit no confidence letters in her, with many more experiencing buyer's remorse. The Mirror quotes one top Tory as saying, "MPs are ready to put letters of no confidence in as early as this week. Liz Truss is not very bright, has poor judgment, little empathy with people, and sees everything in money terms. In the worst of times, she's the worst possible choice for Prime Minister." And another co-conspirator was quoted as saying, "Our only chance of winning a general election is with Boris at the helm." And okay, granted, that is the left-leaning Mirror newspaper, but I can just imagine all the cogs and levers behind the Tory scenes that are now being worked by a vengeful Johnson, along with Rishi Sunak and Michael Gove, also undermining Truss as leader amongst their substantial numbers of allies. Truss ending up in the highest office in the land on the back of a few thousand votes from the unrepresentative Tory party membership, and with only 1/3 of her own party's MPs supporting her, and without having led her party to a win at a general election, all this makes her position extremely weak. In such circumstances, and it pains me to say so, but Vladimir Putin is surely right when, according to The Independent, he told an economic forum in Vladivostok this week that the people of Great Britain don't take part in this instance in the change of government. The ruling elites there have their arrangements. Fair criticism and a damning indictment of our constitution, or lack of it. And the rest of the world has been watching her path to the premiership too, meaning that the chances of anyone outside the UK taking Truss at all seriously are remote. Unfortunately, here in the UK we do have to take her seriously. And more importantly, we have to take her stated plans seriously too. Plans that include tax cuts for the rich, which she says will stimulate the economy. Trickle-down economics, she says, also known as Reaganomics, a dogma that's been discredited time and time again, with even Pope Francis weighing in with this quote in 2020. The promise was that when the glass was full, it would overflow, benefiting the poor. But what happens instead is that when the glass is full, it magically gets bigger. Nothing ever comes out for the poor. I think Truss's particular brand of trickle-down economics is best illustrated by this graphic I've mocked up. When the rich are given more money through tax cuts, they don't tend to spend it. They hide it away in Bermuda. And it's public services that lose out. The loss of taxes leads to a shortage of government revenue, which leads to an excuse for public spending cuts and false justification for the political choice of austerity. But it feels to me like the British electorate have now had enough of austerity, and her plans will crash and burn. Or maybe she'll do a complete U-turn and surprise us all. After all, she used to be a Liberal Democrat until she discovered that she was actually a Tory. She used to be staunchly pro-European until after the advisory referendum, when she suddenly discovered she was actually a swivel-eyed Brexiteer. So you can't really trust anything she says. Well, the truth is I don't trust anything she does either. She first came to my attention when she was Secretary of State for Justice and also Lord Chancellor. It was her job to act as the constitutional protector of the judiciary. You may remember her signally failing to do exactly that, as headlines in the Daily Telegraph and the hate-filled Daily Mail lambasted the 3 High Court judges who had the courage to insist that the law did actually indeed apply to the government, and that in order to trigger Article 50 and start the process of leaving the European Union, that Parliament should actually get to vote on it. You know, taking back control, sovereignty of Parliament and all that. These headlines from the right-wing press were basically an incitement to murder. But Dim Lizzy was not moved to criticise them, despite her constitutional role requiring her to protect the judiciary from any kind of threat. Lord Falconer, the former Lord Chancellor, remarked at the time that Liz Truss should be sacked for signalling to judges that they had lost their constitutional protector. Far from being sacked, though, after backing Boris Johnson in the 2019 leadership contest, she was handed the role of Secretary of State for International Trade. And it wasn't long before she was in trouble again, this time admitting that her department had inadvertently allowed shipping of military supplies to Saudi Arabia, in contravention of an order from the Court of Appeal. Neither of these law-breaking acts led to sanctions against her. But there's 2 reasons right there why she is demonstrably unfit for the office of Prime Minister. And that's even before we get onto her woeful post-Brexit trade deals. The first deal that she trumpeted as a historic moment was the one with Japan. In fact, it was that trade deal that earned her her nickname Liz Cut and Paste Truss, as it largely replicated the EU deal with Japan that had been agreed 2 years earlier. Most astonishingly, she boasted about the potential to export British cheese to Japan, a nation with a 95% rate of lactose intolerance among its population. And the cheese quota set by the deal was literally any residue of the EU quota that the EU had not already used up. Is this what they meant by taking back control? And her own department boasted that the deal had potential gains for the UK economy of a massive 0.1%. But had we remained in the EU deal would have given us at least the same potential growth. Another trade deal negotiated by Liz Truss as Trade Secretary and held up as a shining example of our Brexity freedom is the one with Australia. You know, the one that is receiving a huge backlash from British farmers as they face a wave of growth hormone-infused meat from Australia that will undercut their product, with zero tariffs and zero quotas for the next 15 years. The one that the National Farmers Union has described as wholly irresponsible. The one where Liz Truss's department leaked her childish plan to sit the Australian Trade Minister in an uncomfortable chair for 9 hours to get a deal across the line. And this imbecilic quarterwit is our new Prime Minister.
That is a disgrace.
Like with all Liz Truss's trade deals, this Brexity Tory government has been absolutely desperate to demonstrate Brexit wins, and our potential trading partners are well aware of this. That's why Truss had to sign up to a load of trade deals that benefit the other country way more than they benefit the UK. In a few years, looking back at the commitments that Truss has locked this country into, future governments will be shaking their heads in disbelief at how much she gave up in these trade deals and how little she managed to get in return. At the same time as being Trade Secretary, Truss was also, bizarrely, Equalities Minister. An Equalities Minister who appointed the ex-Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott as co-president of the Board of Trade. This is a guy who is a homophobic misogynist and who believes that gay couples should not be allowed to raise children. Truss claims that his views were not relevant to his appointment to the Board of Trade. But 2 of the government's LGBT advisors resigned because of concerns over Liz Truss's ignorance of key LGBT issues and her part in the government's creation of a hostile environment for LGBTQI people. One of the advisors, Jane Ozanne, said that within the LGBTQI community, Liz Truss was known as the Minister for Inequality. This was partly due to the fact that after 2 years of pledges on banning gay conversion therapy, she had done absolutely nothing as Equalities Minister to stop this harmful practice. Despite all this, her career carried on an upward trajectory under Boris Johnson, and in 2021 she was promoted to Foreign Secretary, a position that she made her own by spaffing eye-watering amounts of public money as she leveraged one of the great officers of state to enjoy a lavish lifestyle on public money. She famously flew by private jet to Australia at a cost of over £500,000 rather than use a commercially available business class flight which would have fitted her schedule and cost a fraction of the amount, and which would have even got her there 5 hours quicker. But no, the woman that Boris Johnson referred to as the human hand grenade insisted on using the private government Airbus A321, a plane with a capacity of 235 passengers, converted for the government to provide VIP-style accommodation with flat beds and, although I don't know for sure, probably boasts a jacuzzi, sauna, cocktail bar, hairdresser, nail technician, silver service waiter, pianist and a masseur. And to be clear, this was her decision alone, as only the Foreign Secretary is allowed to authorise the use of the plane for such a flight. The profligate, carefree spending by the human hand grenade included the scandal of the £3,000 bill she spent on lunch at a private members' club owned by Tory party donor Robin Burley, directly overruling civil service instructions to look for a cheaper venue. £3,000 of public money for lunch, claimed by Truss and handed straight to a Tory donor. Some people might call that blatant corruption. And if you're still not convinced that Truss is unfit to be Prime Minister, let me remind you of former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating's assessment of her being demented. I quote, "Remarks by the British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss that China can engage in military aggression in the Pacific, encouraged by Russia's contingent moves against Ukraine, are nothing short of demented. Not simply irrational, demented. Truss would do us all a favour by hightailing it back to her collapsing, disreputable government, leaving Australia to find its own way in Asia." Paul Keating and other Australians clearly wanted the human hand grenade gone from Australia before someone pulled out the pin. But although she apparently embraces that nickname enthusiastically, Johnson never intended it to be complimentary, having been quoted as saying that anything passed her way needed to be handled with care. He used to send her into meetings that weren't going well in order to metaphorically blow things up. As Prime Minister, and based on her comments during the recent leadership contest, it looks like the human hand grenade will be blowing up the economy, public services, and even the United Kingdom itself. There's no doubt that just like her predecessor, she is totally unfit for the office of Prime Minister.